Yauri is an ancient kingdom with rich cultural heritage located in Kebbi State, northwestern Nigeria. It is considered as one of the most important states of the Hausa-speaking people and the chief trade center in northwestern Nigeria. The Yauri Emirate is a small but powerful kingdom in the south of the Sahara. It borders Nupe to the south and Kebbi Kingdom to the north. It is the oldest kingdom in Kebbi State.
Yauri is a fantastic place, not because I am an indigent. This is the most peaceful, the most friendly environment you can find. We have a slogan, Yauri, home for all.
The Regatta Festival of the Yauri people is a unique cultural extravaganza. Regatta is a word which means marine war. The word connotes buoyance and prestige. The celebration is a colorful display of culture full of pomp and dexterity. The 200-year-old festival demonstrates the naval strength of the Gungu people of Yauri as highly skilled Gungu warriors attacked dangerous hippopotamus that were destroying farmlands.
That has been started in this area more than 200 years ago. Initially, it was like a navy. People attack wild animals like hippopotamus and crocodiles in the river to show their expertise in rowing the boat.
The festival started when a flotilla of boats carrying warriors were used to protect bridal trains from wild animals. Today, the Regatta Festival is a prestigious display of wealth, power, and influence during wedding ceremonies, demonstrating the level of importance the people of Yauri attach to the women folk and particularly a bride during her wedding.
The festival was now turned into ceremony. They bring the bride to the house, they will escort the bride, use those same dances of regatta to celebrate the marriage.
You will be thrilled by a variety of traditional cultural dances and display from various communities of the Emirate. Each community displays cultural dances unique to them. Some of these dances and displays are over 500 years old, handed down from one generation to another.
It is one event that will create so many opportunities. We're going to start to have investors coming. We're going to start to create jobs. Beyond that, if it is properly managed, it is going to be a money spinner for our emirate, for Kebbi, and even the country at large.
The festival features captivating water events and sporting competitions that will keep you at the edge of your seats, such as the swimming competition and the Nutsa, which is a form of water sport where contestants submerge themselves in the river to determine who can stay underwater for longer. This measures their stamina and endurance. The competitor who remains submerged the longest is declared winner. Another famous attraction of the festival is the floating gourd race, where contestants on floating calabash race across the river, struggling to stay afloat. Children are not left out of the fun as they are placed in plastic bowls, paddling with their hands towards shore. Not forgetting the trailing canoe race, which is one of the major events of the festival. Essentially, the Regatta Festival is about the uniqueness, honor, and high esteem with which the people of Yauri attach to women, and also an exciting cultural and social economic carnival of the diverse people of the Yauri Kingdom.
NTA Tuesday Live, analytical, in-depth, educative and interactive on national issues accommodating all sides of opinions.
We as a people have understood that we have to fight corruption before it fights us back.
Poverty has a financial index So it should be fought also with a financial weapon. Give it to the social investments program. It has been a very courageous battle.
Tuesday Live, every Tuesday at 10:30 p.m. Join us.
Flag is flown at half-mast to depict the low mood of the nation.
Flags at half-mast in honor of fallen heroes of Kaduna military air mishap.
House of Representatives opens investigation into recovered loot as Senate considers bill to unbundle NIPOST.
Fresh attacks on INEX facilities in Anambra, Imo, and Enugu states.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, our focus is on the social media and privacy policy.
Indeed. Now, how would you like your social media conversations and even private businesses to be really protected today, encrypted or fully on display? Well, if you're on WhatsApp, soon you should be having a displayed banner in your smartphone app explaining when it will share your data with Facebook. What? Yes, indeed, you screamed right.
That's right, Jumai, and anyone, of course, would be flustered by the scenario you just described. But then it is said that WhatsApp is going ahead with this rather controversial change to the privacy terms that it has always operated. This itself is not altogether a new policy, as it has set this in motion since 2016 and decided to shift gear gradually to the beginning of this year, 2021.
Exactly, Kingsley, and that made the conversation over these changes to privacy policy obviously spark diverse reactions and backlashes from the tech industry watchers and several users who are somewhat not budging to the new line in data privacy disruptions.
But then, this month of May has witnessed more voices, as it were, over what this information sharing policy across the social networks will portend for users elsewhere and even here on the African continent, and particularly for us here in Nigeria, where issues of information communication technology really, of course, we take it hook, line, and sinker with everyone latching onto it without bothering about the consequences.
And data protection, no doubt, is an interesting feature and discourse around the world, and Nigeria, as a part of the global village, cannot keep still over the concerns of information protection and regulation implementation as well. So how have we received the subject matter? Do we have a good grasp of the state of information systems management in the nation alongside privacy policy or control over what is being regulated from other climes?
Well, the question you just asked, Juma, is a pertinent one because there are concerns that the privacy policy being operated for countries in Africa and Asia, that policy isn't the same as you would find for users of the social media apps, say in Europe or in the Americas. Attention has been drawn to this by one of the critical agencies in the ICT sector, namely that's the NIDA, that's National Institute for Technology Development Agency. Now, it is, of course, indicated that there ought to be a regulatory guideline on data protection at any point. And what, of course, are we required to do in this instance that WhatsApp, I think the policy came into effect effectively on the 15th of May. Yeah, they said there will be repeated reminders for you to accept the new policy. And it turns out that sometimes those policies are usually the equivalent of what is referred to as the small print. In insurance in those days, you always have the little disclaimer in small print, and nobody bothers,
to read it.
Sometimes, too, those policies are usually often detailed, and you're asking yourself, what is the meaning of this? Accept or decline. If you fail to decline, of course, the messages keep coming back, and once you accept, you are hooked, and therefore you are bound. What are the issues surrounding all of this, and why is NIDA so concerned that our privacy policy should be one that ordinarily doesn't hamper our personal data as well as our business conversations? It's also thinking of going ahead with organizing what it calls a hackathon, by which it's going to invite IT experts, usually young persons, to begin to develop their apps, such as the equivalent, for instance, of WhatsApp, Facebook, and others. And once we have that, of course, we then proceed. Some countries, of course, don't use WhatsApp. China, for instance. Well, we raise these many issues, of course, as well as others, as we get into our conversation segment onto this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, to which I now welcome you. We're broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Jumo Yusuf, welcoming you to the program. We shall have our complimentary segments in the course of the program. But in the meantime, Tessie Omeri is with the morning news. Hello, Tessie. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good morning, Kingsley and Jumwe, and welcome to the morning highlight news. President Muhammadu Buhari Monday hosted Professor Faustin Acheng Todera, President of Central African Republic, telling him that his first concern for his people is their security and well-being. President Muhammadu Buhari has described the sudden demise of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Attahiru, and other gallant officers of the nation's military as major setback in the renewed onslaught against terrorism and other acts of criminality bedeviling the country. The president stated this while receiving members of the Nigerian Governors Forum on a condolence visit over the tragedy that befell the nation. The chairman, Nigeria Governors Forum and Governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, who led the delegation, told the president that the governors were saddened that the officers died when the military started to feel the impact of its new leadership. And presidential directive for the flying of national flag at half-mast in honor of the late Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Attahiru, and other victims of the Kaduna air mishap was observed in the Federal Capital Territory.
Flag is flown at half-mast to depict the low mood of the nation. That is just the significance.
He died in active service. He won a lot of medals based on service. So flying the flag is good because he deserves it. I equally suggest that a national monument to be named after him.
And I think one of these barracks, they should name after him.
President Muhammadu Buhari has directed that the Federal Executive Council meeting scheduled to hold on Wednesday, 26th May 2021 be postponed to Wednesday, 2nd June 2021. Secretary to Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, in a statement says the postponement of FEG is in furtherance to Mr. President's directive for the national flag to fly at half-mast nationwide from 24th to 26th May 2021. And the declaration of Monday, 24th May 2021 as work-free day for members of armed forces. Similarly, the Police Council meeting scheduled for Thursday, 27th May has been postponed to Thursday, 3rd June 2021 in honor of late Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Attahiru, and 10 other senior military officers and servicemen. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed a strong resolve to address the conflicts of farmers and herders in a sustained and lasting manner that should lead to the emergence of permanent solution to the frequent clashes. The House of Representatives has opened an investigation to assess the status of all recovered loots movable and immovable assets of government. It was reported that the House is interested in knowing how recovered assets were managed or utilized from 2002 to 2020.
Will not likely succeed if the Nigerian people do not have confidence that the recovered assets cannot be properly accounted for by those who have the responsibility to so do.
Our purpose here today is to ascertain what happened to those machines and to determine why, despite the massive investment in the sector, we did not achieve the modernization objectives.
This has nothing to do with our inability to purchase scanners. Yes, we can buy, but everything to do with poor maintenance culture.
And unbundling the Nigerian Postal Service will not only upgrade Nigeria's postal institution to a global player, but to also expand its commercial viability. This is coming from the public hearing on Nigerian Postal Service Repeal and Reenactment Bill convened by the Senate Committee on Communications.
Cover implementation of a national postal policy encouraging local and foreign investment in the postal industry.
Establishment of a regulatory framework for the postal industry, which shall be an effective, impartial, and independent authority. That is the Nigerian Postal Commission.
Nigerian Postal Service to be exclusively in charge of stamp duties. Our observation, Mr. Chairman, is that this will be against the spirit of the Constitution.
3 offices of INEC came under attack in Anambra, Imo, and Enugu states on the night of Sunday, 23rd May 2021. In Anambra, the state INEC headquarters, that is office, ARCA, was set ablaze. In a statement by INEC Commissioner for Information Festus Okoye, describes the attack on the INEC facilities as a major blow to the Commission's preparations for the November 6, 2021 governorship election, as 2 stores housing electoral materials were burnt down. In Imo State, the INEC office in Ihazu, Mbise local government area was also attacked Sunday evening in an obvious attempt to set the building ablaze. The statement added that in Enugu, the Igbo South local government office was similarly attacked. The store was completely burnt down before the Enugu State Fire Service responded and prevented the inferno from raising other parts of the building. And the fluctuation in number of COVID-19 infections continues in 2 digits as 42 new cases have been recorded in Nigeria within the last 24 hours, bringing the country's total confirmed cases to 166,061. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, indicates that among the 42 new cases, Lagos recorded 14, Gombe 11, Ebonyi and Kano had 5 new cases each, with FCT 4, while Edo, Kaduna and Rivers recorded 1 new case each. NCDC records shows that the total discharged cases so far is 156,492, while the death toll stands at 2,067. And that's the morning news. The program continues with Kingsley and Jumei after this time out. Good morning.
Recently, both the president and vice president demonstrated leadership by being among the first Nigerians to have the AstraZeneca vaccine administered to them on live TV for all in the country to see. Subsequently, many federal ministers, political leaders, and members of the Presidential COVID-19 Task Force have publicly taken the vaccine to follow in the footsteps of President Buhari and Vice President Oshibaja. To obtain it yourself, please go to the NPHCDA website. There is a link to click on in order to register and schedule your vaccination. In the meantime, please continue to wear face masks, wash your hands frequently, use hand sanitizer, and observe social distancing. This message was brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around. or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Guess what?
What?
I scored a hat trick today.
Cool! Wow! And how did you celebrate?
Just do your hands like this.
And hold your nose like this?
Body odor is caused by germs. That's why you need the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which protects against 99.9% odor-causing germs with an extra burst of menthol freshness. Dettol, be 100% sure.
The Sports Parliament, your weekly sports program, is back to the studio every Thursday, 10:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. live on the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest television network. Watch out for the parliamentarians with renewed vigor and zest. Mr. Speaker with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. Sports Parliament, a must-watch. Sports Parliament, the home of sports verdict. The eyes have it.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, with the federal government calling for rapid improved policy in the solid mineral sector to minimize dependency on oil. Let's listen into that story with details from our correspondent, Comfort Amodu.
Seeking the rapid improved procedures, documentation and regulations in the Nigerian solid mineral sector, government as part of its policy measures strategizing to develop its monumental mining potentials and minimizing dependency on oil. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed, who disclosed this, said the policy has become more urgent in view of the present global economic challenges occasioned by COVID-19 pandemic as well as volatility of global oil prices. The minister was speaking at the Stakeholders Consultative Forum on the review of the draft mineral export guidelines in Abuja, stating that streamlining the operations of the sector would help guarantee proper regulation of the sector and promote the development of appropriate technology. Likewise, Minister of Mines and Steel Development maintained that implementation of the guidelines would bring sanity to the solid mineral extractive industry and further inform direct investors' decision.
There's so many industries in Nigeria, and their raw materials are actually sourced from minerals. But because we don't mine the minerals, or in case we haven't mined them, we export them in the raw form. And then our companies, our industries now go back to go and buy these semi-finished products as their own inputs into their industries. So the first thing we are doing is, we mine the minerals, but after mining them, we must do some beneficiation locally. We must process locally. When we process locally, we'll be able to satisfy a lot of industrial needs. We are going to create value along that chain.
Many thanks, Comfort Amadou, for the package. Next for Good Morning Nigeria, it's newspaper review.
right. My colleague Jumai and I, of course, will take the two papers that we have in turn and then discuss one or two of the stories before we move on to another segment of the paper. I have the Punch newspaper with me. The Punch says above the name flag, federal government bars 22-year-old aircraft from Nigeria and releases 5 billion naira aviation bailout. Federal government bars 22-year aircraft from Nigeria, releases 5 billion naira aviation bailout. So that's on page 22. Experts predict 11.5% lending rate as MPC ends meeting. And reps allege sabotage, grill officials over $120 million abandoned ports scanners. Indian strain, federal government begins hunt for 90 isolation evaders Wednesday. And an earpiece there, one of the victims of last Friday's military aircraft crash in Kaduna, says Taiwo was billed to go on UK course from June 12, says sister of late pilot Asoni. That's on page 8. Asaba declaration. Governors disagree as presidency backs Malami on open grazing ban. Governors disagree as presidency backs Malami on open grazing ban. Two riders to that headline. Governor's announcement on grazing is of questionable legality. That's according to the presidency. And the other rider says, system outdated. We have to stop grazing cows from Karo and Amoda to Lagos. That's according to Ondo State Governor. And then you see the photographs there on the front page, the bonfire, as well as the blockade of the Abuja Kaduna Highway. This was in Gauraka, in the Tafa local government area of Niger State, during a protest against abductions on the Abuja Kaduna Highway. That took place yesterday. Zulum threatens sanctions as panel unveils 91 ghost workers. Protesting Niger communities block highway as gunmen abduct 15. And Bauchi orders recruitment of 100 doctors, 2,500 student nurses. Lalong and Senator lament as herdsmen kill pregnant mother and 14 others. NAPTIP rescues 4 stolen kids from FCT child traffickers. And of course, you have the other headline there.
Yeah, I have other headlines from the Nation newspaper. And above the masthead, we have more INEC offices raised in Anambra, Enugu. You find the details on page 6, including Imo State. While autonomy for legislature judiciary is key by agency, that's coming from the DG, you find the details on page 8. NEMA launches 1.8 billion tools from Japanese government. Details also on page 8. IMF activates $50 billion plan to end COVID-19. You find all that on page 5. And just below the masthead, APC must honor North-South Power Shift Pact. Details on page 8. Niger sacks 20 teachers. That's on page 33. 58 killed in Niger, Benue, Plateau. With a rider, anti-kidnapping protesters block Abuja Kaduna Road. My colleague Kingsley read that in his own paper. The bold headlines we have here is Presidency slams Southern Governors open grazing ban. With riders, federal government to fund ranching. Akeredolu ban irreversible. And the picture story you see there, Kano State Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje sympathizing with victims of tanker explosion at Murtala Mohammed Specialist Hospital in Kano yesterday. And at the bottom plate of the Nation newspaper, Buhari governor's orders to determine APC convention dates. You find all the details on page 6. Basically, another tanker explosion again.
Well, yes. Unfortunately, this is an issue we have focused on previously on Good Morning Nigeria. Why these tankers keep exploding is an issue that has to be addressed frontally. Unfortunately, the matters involved are multifaceted. Some of the tankers, of course, are not roadworthy. Some of them, sometimes they also complain about the poor state of their trucks, of the roads, and some of them get overloaded. They're using experienced drivers, and so on and so forth. But the running story, of course, has to do with matters arising from the plane crash that occurred on Friday, which claimed the lives of the Chief of Army Staff and some other senior military officers. The Federal Executive Council has postponed its meeting scheduled for tomorrow, as well as the meeting of the Police Council, also scheduled for tomorrow in honor of the victims of the crash. Flags.
The country is in shock.
The country is still in shock.
I'm still in shock, actually.
Oh, certainly, certainly. I mean, it's when you begin to consider the stories behind the individuals that you recognize the depth sometimes of the loss that these persons have suffered. That's to say, the families, friends, and associates. One of the victims, of course, got married only 3 months ago. Just 3 months ago.
And two are supposed to get married next month?
Yeah, next to get married sometime in October or thereabout. It's so shocking. It's so shocking. I read the moving tribute by one of the ladies who was saying, "Look, don't leave me, don't leave me, don't leave me." But unfortunately, you know, her man is gone. Her man is gone. The father of Olufade said, "Look, he was my only son. I need your prayers to be able to overcome this shock." It's just such sudden death, of course, certainly is something that it's going to take quite a while. And I'm just wondering, because this is part of what is required at this time, how much psychosocial support do these families get at this material time? You know, when there is this sudden bereavement, who goes in to seek to counsel them? Of course, immediate family members will be there, but you also need the help of professionals.
After everybody leaves, you're alone.
Absolutely.
And then depression sets in.
Just if the situation is not well managed. I do recall that from time to time on Good Morning Nigeria, guests, particularly those who are professional psychologists, have drawn attention to the fact that, look, there is an association of professional psychologists in Nigeria, and their services could be called upon at times like this to say, please, you know, step in once family members have of course, played their own part and are going about their regular businesses, to help you bring some more succor, you know, talk persons who are bereaved out of the agony that they are in. It's really very touching. I mean, as you said.
And you know, our culture too has you know, plays a big role. Are people ready to talk? Well, are they ready to, you know, offload what is in their hearts? Most people in Nigeria don't like talking about pain, grieving. But I've always said, grieve and grieve well, so that you can heal.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That is a loss that that is very traumatic. There's no question about that. And we pray and hope that the survivors, you know, will gradually overcome all of this. The thing to imagine is to say on a Friday, your loved one tells you, okay, I'm going on this assignment. When I come back, say on Saturday or Sunday, I'll see you.
What about the people the one that called his mom that is coming to break his fast?
That's right. So you just say, oh no, I'll be with you when I return, or when I get to Kaduna. We'll see around about 7 or 8 o'clock. And then the next thing is this sudden vacancy. May their souls continue to rest in peace.
Amen. And this one, anti-kidnapping protesters, are our youths beginning to come out to say they can no longer tolerate such happening along the way, along the road, kidnapping their people, paying ransom and all that? Well, this picture, anti-kidnapping protesters from Kuraka, Tafa local government. What do you think?
Well, precisely. It's out of frustration. It's out of frustration. We know what has been happening in parts of Niger. The governor himself has indicated that Boko Haram has set up camp. Bandits are in some of the locations. But I wouldn't know whether there has been an update to his alarm that Boko Haram has set up camp in parts of Niger. And the frequent kidnapping incidents, of course, precipitated what we are seeing in terms of the protests by the youth of the area. It's also important to advise the youth that they should form their own groups, security groups, if you like to work in collaboration with the regular security forces. Yes, this frustration is mounting, and of course it's uncocked now with the demonstrations that we have seen. But they also have to form themselves into groups. Those people who are operating as kidnappers or as bandits are functioning in their own territory, and probably these bandits and kidnappers are strangers. So why would you then allow strangers and other criminal elements to overrun your land? So part of what is required for them to do is to form themselves into vigilance groups and see how they can work with the regular security agencies, the military, the police, first, of course, by way of giving intelligence, and then also leading them to the hideouts of these particular elements, not taking the laws into their own hands in the first instance. The other point is about the federal government barring 22-year-old aircraft from Nigeria. Well, there was a time, of course, where the country was witnessing frequent air crashes, and one of the factors at the time was the age of the aircraft. And so there was a policy similar to what is just being re-emphasized now, being reintroduced now, to say, look, aircraft above a certain age cannot fly, particularly those that are used for scheduled commercial operations. But experts have also pointed out, again on Good Morning Nigeria and other fora, to say that age isn't necessarily a factor of the aircraft efficiency or integrity.
The maintenance.
Maintenance is key. Maintenance is key. If you do not do your routine checks, a brand new aircraft within a couple of years, of course, becomes a danger in the air. So what is required is for the NTA, for instance, to ensure that the audit that it's supposed to undertake on a regular basis is done, and then we don't cut corners. To say, look, if you are supposed to have a scheduled maintenance, be sure that you had that particular scheduled maintenance. And we saw the sanction that was imposed recently on Azman Air with the suspension of its operations for several weeks.
Well, Kingsley, we're running out of time for this morning. Well, that's newspaper review for now. We'll take a break. When we return, our conversation will begin.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
At the first sign of pain, you need a solution that you can trust to provide effective relief and is gentle on the stomach. Try Panadol Caplets for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Caplets. This has been Medifact for Panadol.
Kinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Tayi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Guess what?
What?
I scored a hat trick today.
Cool!
Wow!
And how did you celebrate?
Just do your hands like this.
And hold your nose like this.
Body odor is caused by germs. That's why you need the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which protects against 99.9% odor-causing germs with an extra burst of menthol freshness. Dettol, be 100% sure.
As Oni of Ife, as someone who cares about the well-being and safety of our people, it's time for each and every one of us to realize that COVID-19 is real and it has killed millions of people around the world. Scientists have developed this vaccine. The vaccine is safe for everyone and it contains no microchip, nor can it alter our DNA. However, we must continue to stay safe and stay clean, wear face masks, clean our hands on regular basis, and try as much as possible to avoid a very large crowd and gathering. For those who choose to be vaccinated, it will go a long way in protecting yourself and your loved ones from COVID-19.
Welcome back, and to kickstart our conversation, here's a background report as packaged by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Today, with the numbers and millions and billions of visitors and active participation on the World Wide Web, life on the internet, especially through the social media, is the fad, as it indeed connects parts of the globe together, making the world a global village. However beautiful as the offerings of the social media bring for connection and communication with all, many concerns have been raised about the activities that go on through it to discredit our trust for the new media usage, data exposure, or going into classified or confidential information of individuals as they find ways into people's lanes and paths on the web. Information in the hands of some wrong individuals and groups who now use it against such users. So far, 24 African countries out of 53 have adopted laws and regulations to protect personal data, and this is actually modeled after the 2016 EU General Data Protection Regulation. 3 countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Zimbabwe, have already enacted personal data protection legislation, the promulgation of which has not yet been effective, as the laws are still in the form of bills. Tanzania is in the process of enacting personal data protection legislation. Nigeria, on its part, adopted its first data protection regulation in early 2019. Public and private actors have to conduct internal assessments, while the National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, the government's agency in charge of monitoring its development, is set to enforce regulations in this regard. With some measures put in place to protect individual data on social media, how private are information? How best can one be sure that indeed nobody has access to classified and confidential information? What is the possibility of social media privacy data regulation? These are some of the questions guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that background. With us in the studios now to discuss matters on this very interesting subject, which is social media and privacy policy. We have 2 of our regular guests, but from the National Information Technology Development Agency, we have the desk officer in charge of data protection regulation, Mr. Femi Daniel. Femi Daniel, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Also here with us is Abdul Hakim Ajijola, cybersecurity expert. Delighted to have you again.
Thank you for inviting me.
Dr. Uche Mbanaso is Executive Director, Center for Cyberspace Studies, Nasarawa State University in Kefi. That's nearby Nasarawa State. Pleasure to have you again.
Thank you for having me again.
Okay, so gentlemen, delighted to have you with us. Of course, we hope to be joined later on in the conversation by another guest if he's able to make it in good time.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you mind?
Yes. Now let's begin Let's begin with Abdul Hakim Ajibola. It's
Yes,
good
ma'am.
to have you join us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, social media data, sort of breaches the tech community. It's rocking the breaches, is rocking the tech community in Nigeria, and we as the users also. And indeed, it's quite disturbing when you see you use your data and information is out there that you didn't want to give it out there. So how huge and worrisome should this be for us today in Nigeria?
Well, I think it's of great concern to everybody, including government. And I think we need to look at why, for example, is privacy important. There are some people who would tell you that, well, I have nothing to hide, and therefore privacy is not a problem. However, these same people close the door when they go to the toilet, to the bathroom. So, we all need some level of privacy. Now, having said that, really the issues of privacy border on power, control. They also address issues of money, because data today, as Clive Humbleby famously said, is the new oil, although it has to be processed, just like oil. But also privacy is about respect. And furthermore, it's about social boundaries. And I think in society, it's also about trust. And as we know, without trust, business won't work, relationships won't work, and indeed, society will not work. And so this is why privacy, for example, and our data, whether it's social media or otherwise, is so important. And I think this helps us to understand why we do need to be concerned.
Okay, thank you very much, Abdul Hakim. Mr. Femi Daniel, let's bring you here. Just about a fortnight ago, NITA issued a statement which, of course, was drawing attention to the very critical issue of privacy policy with regard to the utilization of social media. And this statement came just about the same time as a number of users on WhatsApp were getting messages to say, look, accept the new privacy policy and all of that. Give us a background as to what NIDA apprehended and why it had to issue that statement or that advisory.
Thank you very much. Early January 2021, the WhatsApp sent, there was a new development on the WhatsApp privacy policy. And that was to the effect that because there had been a merger between, Facebook actually bought over WhatsApp, and they updated their privacy policy to now indicate that the information, particularly the metadata is the data about the data. What that means is that when the technologies can actually pick the type of phone you are using, where you are sending messages from, who you are, the location you are sending it to. So while they don't see the content of your message, but there are close to 13 other personal information that can be gotten. So what the Facebook group try to do or are trying to implement now is such that from WhatsApp, information, metadata of personal data subjects from WhatsApp can now be shared with other members of the Facebook group, and this includes Facebook itself, the Instagram, and some other products that Facebook may have today or in the future. So that actually, we had, as a responsible government, we had engaged them at the national level, but we didn't stop there. We also, at the African level, because NIDA, as a regulator, is part of the African Network of Data Protection Authorities, we had a meeting of all the African Network of Data Protection Authorities in April, where we engaged the global policy officers of Facebook to understand the context of what they are trying to do, why they are doing it, and what could be done. So it is after that long period of ventilation of ideas and passing our concerns to them that NIDA eventually had to come to issue an advisory to Nigerians to let them understand what how the new privacy policies could actually impact on them. So that is the context of where we are and how we've gotten here.
Mr. Femi Daniel, having law is one thing. Implementation and compliance is another. What is the level of compliance in Nigeria now?
So like you rightly mentioned, the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation came into being in January 2019, and NIDA had actually, as the pro-tem, let me use the word pro-tem, because there is no doubt all over the world there is the opportunity of having a dedicated data protection authority. But because of the economic and the very important, important need for us to have a data protection law, which if we hadn't had a data protection law at 2019, by now we would have lost billions of dollars in investment, would have lost a lot of opportunities, because if a country that do not have a minimum level of data protection will be cut off from the global digital economy. So the NDPR, I would say, is a stopgap measure which had actually brought in a lot of relief to our digital economy space. But of course, it can always be improved upon and built upon, which we are seriously supporting. Now, the level of compliance, when we issued the NDPR, we were very strategic. We tried to be slim on administrative costs and also have the highest impact. So one of the things we did was to, rather than telling people to register with the regulatory agency, which is what happens across most of the African countries and even in Europe, we decided that we should be implementing data audit. And since last year was the first year we received this data audit, we had 635 organizations submit their data compliance audit from 13 sectors across the economy. But this year, though the timeline is 30th of June, we've already almost doubled that number, and there is far more awareness, and people are now getting much more aware about their rights. So I think in terms of level of awareness and implementation, Nigeria has done very well, and it's indicated by the accolades and recognitions we are having. And we are also supporting other African countries. We've been getting contacts from Gambia, from Uganda, and all that too, for them to learn from some of the things we have done. And I think it can only be better. We can only build on it. But we've started on the right track, and we just need to continue, developing on what we've already begun.
Okay, thank you very much, Femi Daniel. We'll return to you. Let's bring in now Dr. Uche Banaso. Dr. Uche Banaso, look, 20 years ago, when we got into the GSM revolution, as it were, in the Nigerian market, the key thing for everyone was access. From just about 400,000 landlines, plus a few hundred Not 9 Not, as those ones were called at the time, we now have millions of telephone lines. And so access, freedom, and opportunity is in everybody's hands. So it is not just your smartphone. You have your iPad, you have even your laptop, and so on and so forth. But as you experts will also say, there is a veil behind this device that you have or this device that you use. How aware are people about what lies behind that veil? So tell us, so that before we get into the nitty-gritty of privacy policy, what it entails, and how you should, as a user, be conscious of this privacy policy.
Thank you very much. I think before I dive into this your question, I'll lead to less more foundation. Actually, privacy, my PhD thesis in 2008 is on privacy, and done extensive study on privacy issues. Privacy is very intricate and often confusing. And a lot of people are just grappling about privacy issues because it's very fluid. I'm going to take it from technical perspective on the fact that most users are very naive. What to us is the benefit we are getting, and these benefits are just very minor benefits vis-a-vis what the privacy intruders are amassing. in the contest. And so the ordinary user, for instance, you want to download an app and they want to get access to everything in your device. 99% of the users don't care. They click accept. And so it is because of that, how do I put it, lack of understanding of the implication or the risk or the consequences of that I click, I accept. And so they are just about the benefit to be able to communicate, like if you say, for instance, WhatsApp. So everybody is interested to be in WhatsApp group. Most people are not interested, actually, is there any violation? And that brings to the fact that privacy configuration for a very long time has been a kind of a unilateral approach, in the sense that the application providers are the one who dictates how privacy is configured, if you understand what I mean. So
explain that to our viewers.
I don't understand.
Okay, so it's on the philosophy of you accept it or you don't get it.
That's to say, look, these are the terms for your using this app.
Yes.
That's
and
right.
If
Either
you don't accept it or you don't get the application.
I've tried so many times when I deny.
Yeah. Yes, you don't get the application.
I don't get
so,
application.
so you see, there is. We think that most of the applications we get on the Play stores are free. They are not free because the main way they are getting their returns is through trading with your data. And that is why if you are not able to accept it, they shut you down. And so it is provider-centric. So they dictate. So there is nothing like, for instance, self-governance in privacy. So privacy is very, very intricate. And is something that is actually very, very hard to protect. And so all the idea of policy, regulation, is just scratching the surface about what the privacy is. So the user focuses on the benefits rather than the consequences, rather than the risk, because the risk is aftermath, but the benefit is just immediate. And that is why influences users' naivety on this aspect. And so they are not concerned about what is going to happen after I download this application. And so they click, and so they also, there is no clear awareness from their own perspective about the risk involved. So the primary factor there is that the users are not aware of the risk. And so they can't make decision. So because there is nothing they can balance between access to their data and the benefit. And so they focus on the immediate gain. And this is why most people just have to click the button to accept.
And the social media today, we are being part of a global village and the world is in your palm. What you post, it could be personal, it could be educative, it could be informative out there. Is there any way that these app providers can use your data in a negative way?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In 2015, I published a research article, The Cyberspace and the Intensification of Privacy Invasion. And that was when we see what was happening in the social media, how they were intruding. For instance, almost every app needs your contact. And if you don't accept any of them, they block you. You can't get access. And so there is, like my very good friend said, Abuja, data is the new oil. Google became what it is just by trading on data. You use Google free, but it's not free. They are trading on your data. And so this is why what is happening because they spend a lot of time providing this application and they trade it on you as free. And so this is from the concept of social engineering. So it appears to be free, but it's not free. So everything you get on the cyberspace as a free gift has an underlying thing you pay for it. And so our data are used, your location data is used for marketing, okay? And also used by security agencies. So it depends on whose interest they are trying to trade this data, so if you understand what I mean. So there are a lot of drivers of privacy issues. Business interest, those who are using it for their business, those who are using it for national security, and also you might be aware of the identity theft that are on the criminal world, who also uses it for their own benefit. And so data is at the center. This privacy data is at the center of everything we are talking about today in the cyberspace.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mbana. So, Abdul Hakim Ajizola, we're back to you again.
Yes, sir.
Still just seeking to understand the ecology, if you like, or the ecosystem of social media and where the privacy policy comes in, seeking, of course, to either lure in users or to also let them know the boundaries of their utilization of a particular app.
Well, let me build on what the good doctor has said. There's a famous adage that if something is free, you are not, what do you call it? You are not the customer. If something is free, you are not the customer. You are actually the product being sold. So I think this has to hit home with all of us, that these things that you see, quote unquote, free, the person is not giving it to you because they love your face. There must be something they are getting. Now, having said that, forgive me if I may be blunt, I personally don't use WhatsApp. And I don't use it because the nature of one's work, it has what we would call cyber hygiene challenges, as Mr. Femi Daniel has correctly mentioned. But there are always alternatives, and this is the beauty of cyberspace. If you don't like this particular app, there are other apps. Now, if you use other apps, there are penalties. For example, maybe you don't have as many users in the ecosystem. Maybe you don't have, it's not as easy to use. And some, maybe you even have to pay some amount.
Token, yeah,
but is it Facebook? There is an alternative, or there are alternatives. YouTube, there are alternatives. And the reason is that because these people, these apps that I've mentioned have a very voracious appetite for your data. And that's why they are multi-billion-dollar organizations. Now, coming back home to our youth, one of the interesting things I believe is that in the process of our developing some of our policies, we are a little bit behind. And this was something we were talking with Dr. Mbanaso before we came in. As a society, I think that we do not spend or invest enough time and effort in underlying research. Because what this research does, it empowers us to project forward, to know what is coming, and therefore be prepared. So, for example, recently there were attempts in the legislature, the national legislature, to develop some kind of social media bill, which brought a lot of hue and cry. Now, the truth of the matter is that social media, whether we like it or not, is controlled, is monitored, okay? There are sanctions on it. Let us ask former President Trump. He went to an extent, social media banned him. I mean, the mainstream social media. So the question really as a society we need to ask ourselves is, who censors social media? It's certainly not the Nigerian government. It's certainly not your parents. It's certainly not, society.
Oh, then.
It's some
provider.
Corporations, most of them at this point are based in Southern California, who use their own culture, ethics, and perspectives to censor everybody in the world. Now, that doesn't mean that the endeavor to develop a social media bill in Nigeria was a good one. And where I'm going is that, you see, we do need to have some type of controls over these media, but they have to be within the democratic context. And they have to be based on democratic norms. Now, the argument for for many of us shut down the Nigerian endeavor was that there were several particular clauses that one would argue were undemocratic. This is where the problem is. So in all things, it's about achieving the right balance. So we would argue that there is a need for some level of social media control. By whom is the question? To what extent? Because it must be in line, with, like I said, our social and democratic norms. And if I may just touch on the issues of norms, there's been a lot of work done, for example, the Global Commission on the Stability of Cyberspace in The Hague. We'd actually done a lot of work on developing norms for state and non-state actors. The UN process, or the UN processes, tend to focus on what you would call the state actors, the nation states. But there is also a need for us to develop social media and cyberspace and cybersecurity norms for non-state actors. For example, in our culture, when you meet an elder, maybe you don't look at them in the eye. These are norms. They are soft laws, but they provide some kind of societal control. So clearly, there is a need for those kind of things. But the question and the challenge we have is because we don't have some of this underlying research, members of our legislature are not sufficiently empowered to be able to think through some of the nuances and finesse of how to basically best articulate the kind of legislation required. But please, those who advocate for nothing, no control of social media, must understand that it is controlled, simply it is not by us.
It is controlled and not by us. Well, some stakeholders have said that regulators pick what they censor.
Unfortunately.
Why is that?
Well, again, it's back to this because we don't have that underlying research to develop a long-term strategy. So that what ends up happening is that you pick and choose, you do what is convenient. So actually you are more tactical, if I may say, than strategic. And of course, the big problem we have in this country with many institutions and many of us is that we are reactive. And
policy. That is to say, in the two-way relationship between, say, myself as Kingsley and the app provider, I say, okay, fine, I want to access an app. Dr. Mbanasa was saying earlier, usually there are conditions to say that. I want to, but sometimes when I see a good number of those things, well, it will access your contact, will access your media, your photos. I disappear from that particular app. But earlier, Femi Daniel was talking about some kinds of personal information. He said some 13 of them that could be sources of privacy invasion. I would like you to elaborate more on that, to say, look, there are certain kinds of personal data or personal information. If you are a social media user, that could be out there in the hands of those who are otherwise providing these things for you free.
Thank you very much. So I think the starting point is for us to understand that the social media has a lot of benefits and values. And in the modern world we are, it would not be appropriate for us to say, don't use social media. But definitely, like Mr. Ajijola mentioned, we need to have norms and hygiene. Now, I would quickly step back a little to talk about, there are three major philosophies globally about how we approach these issues of technology and social media. There are the people who believe that business is king. So they need to use their laws to prop up their actors, that's the Americans, to prop up their actors to ensure that they are continuously, winning in the global digital economy. So you see, America does not have a national law on privacy. it has, state laws, and it has sectoral laws, but most of those laws are influenced by the big technology companies. And those laws are actually made to ensure that the Facebooks, Google, Amazon, and all that, they are continuously, making very good profit globally. That's one school of thought. There's another side which are more focused on security and national, critical infrastructure protection. So you look at the Chinese, you look at the Russians. Russia does not even allow you to send data out of their country with very limited exceptions. While the Europeans, they are also consumers of a lot of American technology, but they are focused more on autonomy of the individual. That's why when you look at issues about privacy, the Europeans have some of the most robust laws, because they are like the other speaker mentioned again, there's a difference between the strategy and tactics, but you also need both, particularly when you are just starting. Nigeria is just starting this conversation. We are over 95 years late into this conversation, but what we need to do is to see how we can also quickly bridge the gap and leapfrog some of the issues. So for us as Africa, and this is not just about Nigeria, the question is, where do we want to sit in this whole, whether business, autonomy of the individual, or security? I think we need to have a bouquet, just like during the Cold War we used to have a non-aligned movement. We need to be in a basket, in the middle, to be able to understand that our youths are actually creating some of the most important technologies in the world. So we cannot, as government or as a people, say that we want to cut off from the technology, ecosystem, because our youths are also making a lot of efforts, and they are very fantastic efforts at that, which we need to continue to promote. And also, but the other side to it is that Africa is 1.3 billion people, and what Nigeria had been, we have been pushing for, and I think the message is beginning to percolate to other African countries, is that if we band together, we let the big techs and other, foreign, neo-colonial entities understand that we are not just going to continue sitting back and letting you dictate all the terms of the engagements to us. I think we'll be able to make progress. So now, coming back to the issue of, the question that was raised. In 2019, Facebook got $62 billion from advertising technology, while Google had $107 billion. What is advertising technology? Immediately you go on a site, for example, YouTube, and the thing is rolling. You just see it rolling. At that time, your metadata, some of the things I described before, they will be published to hundreds and thousands of people we call demand-side partners. And also, there's also the supply-side partners. So now they would immediately, I am browsing that site, is showing, okay, Femi Daniel had actually browsed on books, he had browsed on food, he had browsed on this in the recent past, he's from Nigeria, he has this interest, he works with government and things like that. So this catalog of information is put together and it's sold. The highest bidder is the one that will be able to advertise to me. That is why two of us may be browsing the same site, but different adverts will be coming up, because there are different in my image in the technology world is different from yours, and they can gauge my expectation from yours. So what we see here is like, and just to actually bring the point home, we are the products. But what we can't just throw our hands in the air and say we will do nothing. So what we have done, and we have done this not just for Facebook, but we did this in 2019 with Truecaller. The strategy of Nigeria, of course, the long-term strategy is for us to also begin to build our products, to also begin to have some infrastructure that will be able to support our policy dimensions. But right now, what we are doing is to use our number. So we called out Truecaller in 2019 to say, look, your privacy policy, you have one for Europe, you have another one for India and the rest of us. We are not going to take it. And they came back You know, they came back, engaged us, and we worked on some of the issues that were raised. We cannot say technology companies should not operate. That is not our perspective. Nigeria is a free country. I mean, we tend towards capitalism or something like that. But we can also make the technology companies understand that the rights of Nigerians is sacrosanct, and we can use our numbers. When we actually had that engagement with Truecaller, a lot of people stopped using Truecaller, and it affected their business. And of course, this issue that is also happening with Facebook, we believe we will continue engaging with them, and we believe that they would also come to a reasonable, middle ground for them to be able to shift, so that Nigerians will be able to, will be better protected rather than the blanket, take it or leave it, approach that. And sorry, just a final thing. It is impossible for everybody to always read everything about privacy policy, because from a research, it shows that if you need to read all the privacy policy of all the products you use, you will spend 33 days out of 1 year to continue reading that that privacy policy.
So what do you do?
So what?
Sometimes you don't even have the time.
So that is why we also need government, to balance some of these things by empowering Nigerians to understand these are the things that have come up. These are the data that is being collected. You have now a choice to now say, I am going ahead or not. But that is the best I think we can do for now, to empower Nigerians to actually make informed decisions about their social media and other technology platform usage.
Femi, Daniel, thank you very much there for your explanation. There is an issue that you have raised. We will house it in the meantime. That has to do with tech companies and the ICT philosophy. Yes. Talked about the business orientation, autonomy orientation, and the security orientation. But I still want us, for the benefit of our viewers, to get back to Dr. Uche Banaso. Dr. Uche Banaso, earlier you were trying to talk about metadata that can be mined. And Femi was just giving an example of how they trade in your data without your knowing. So what are those 13 likely personal information that could be invaded when you are using an app or you are using a particular product online? And the Truecaller you mentioned, for instance, sometimes when you want to sign in, the adverts will keep popping up on your phone. Say, sign in, sign in, sign in. Then when you press one, you go to the next one, say, we will have access to that, and you quickly just leave them. So
I quickly run away, actually.
Yes, tell us. I mean, what are those kinds of personal information that just might be available to the suppliers of these apps and products?
Thank you very much. If you remember when I started, I said that privacy is a kind of privacy provider-centric. And they control everything, they dictate everything. And so when you look at it from that perspective, because almost every app has access to everything you have on your phone. And so they have access to your contact. By the way, that is how Truecaller, the algorithm Truecaller is using is through harvesting of contact from people's phone. So if you harvest your contact, harvest your contact, harvest his contact, then it matches the number against the names in those contacts. That's a simple algorithm they are using. And they, when they bring it. Truecaller is very invasive. And what they are doing is so amazing. Like we are talking about how they sell this data. So when they have access to your contact, they have access, for instance, if you have what we call ICE, in case of emergency, they already know who is your next of kin, who to be called if there is an emergency. So with your contact information, there's a lot that can be gleaned from your contact information. Then they have your location. They have all your transaction data, all the whole sites you have visited. If you have like a history, they have that. And you can imagine what Abuja said so, that the data has to be processed. And so each of these particular segment of data has some sub-data that can actually be processed from it. Your location information, your contact, your transactions, your camera, also they have access to your camera, which means that they can actually take your picture. and know where your environment, where you are sitting. So if they activate that, it means at any time they want, you are holding your phone, or they also sense what you are trying to do. They can seriously take your picture and know the environment, because I can actually locate you based on the background of the picture you have taken, for instance. And so they have they can take your picture, your financial transactions, your apps, the other apps, they have access to the other apps, so they can actually also your transactions you have made in your banks and all that. They can also access your email. So to the extent they can go actually depends on the application developer. Like I just said recently that the issues in cyberspace, for instance, the invaders, it's not based on any law of chemistry or law of physics or law of any scientific, all the scientific, it's just law of knowledge. So the extent they can code depends on the skill and knowledge of those providers and what are their interests. The business interest is very, very important, because they have customers, they have people, like Femi said, they have people they are feeding. So there are the providers and there are the buyers. And so as the buyers demand, they also try to fulfill the demand of their buyers. And so what is important is all this, is the skill and knowledge of those who are developing the application and what their buyers need. That is to the extent they can intrude our privacy. So everything, almost everything we have in our life today is on the smartphone. Most of your for instance now, we are talking about home automation, that you can use your smartphone today to control things in your home. That information there is very, very important. So somebody might be interested to know the kind of fridge you're using, the kind of drinks you take, the kind of visitors you have. Remember, most of the cameras we have today are IP based. And so there is...
What is for the benefit of
internet protocol, cameras, anything that, like we say, Internet of Things, anything that can be hooked up to the internet today. And so with that, they can control almost everything in your house. They can get every information in your house. So what is very, very key in this aspect is just what the developer, the skill he has, the knowledge he has, and what is the demand from his customers. That is to the extent they can invade our privacy. But there is something that is very, very important I want to point out, because there is something Daniel mentioned about protection, about privacy protection. Because this is very, very germane. There are three elements when you are talking of this privacy protection. You talk of the legal aspect, you talk of the policy aspect, you talk of the technology aspect. Now, privacy protection is leaning on these three pillars. But what is, like I asked someone, how would need as a regulator be able to monitor how my privacy data is used? You know, even if you have all the policies and all the whole regulation, you wouldn't monitor, you wouldn't have the capacity or capability to monitor that. The only time NEDA will come in is if my data is breached. And when it's exposed or leaked, that is only when the regulator now will come. So what am I saying? The underlying thing I'm saying here is that even if we have the policy, the regulation, and the technology, we need to understand the boundaries of these three elements, how they play together to protect the user privacy, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
I do understand, and it's a very, very scary situation for me, because if they can access everything you do in your house, I don't want to imagine some things actually. And let's now join Mr. Ezike Agwele, Chief Executive Officer, Verify Me Nigeria. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Listening to our guests talk about privacy, security, regulation, compliance, and all that. Let's have your opening comment on, you know, our data and privacy and how we can be protected. Let's have your opening comments on that.
Thank you. Well, You know, first of all, there was a recent press release, as we all know, put out by NITA regarding the changes to Facebook policy and WhatsApp policy, actually, specifically. We do have a significant issue in Nigeria. I think we've spoken about the legal aspect of NDPR, and we do have NDPR. One of the things to note, you know, when we look at it is, you know, first of all, is that we need to add a national security view to looking at, you know, when we develop our regulation to protect Nigerian data. It is true that while we say there is, you know, not much, or there are limitations to what we can do in terms of control, it is true that Facebook in particular and many of these social media platforms have different policies that protect privacy more in Europe under GDPR than they do in African countries. They don't protect our data as much as they do in many other countries that have gone a long way to make sure that they do. So this is one of those areas where, you know, we can, you know, clearly, and I think obviously some work has been done, continue to enhance our NDPR to make sure that the Nigerians are protected. But if we also look at it from a national security perspective, there is, you know, a potential issue, and I would say of somewhat of a digital colonization. Almost all of the data all of the data that basically captures how Nigerians, or how we interact with our environment and how we interact with each other, is not in our country. Private corporations and governments have more information on our interactions based on the information they collect, right, than our government and our national security agencies. The people who work in our national security agencies, our military, our intelligence, our government officials, also fall victim. So this information you're talking about in terms of people who interact, you know, who you interact with, all the metadata, your accounts, who you talk to, what you're shopping for, what your probably problems are, you know, when you're looking online, are basically mined as well, you know, to understand even people in our government, right? So that things can be influenced. And we also need to look at things from that perspective, right? So we have a serious issue with NDPR, not even just from a platform perspective, but even in Nigeria today, when you look at our open API ecosystem, where foreign and private companies are coming to Nigeria to struggle with local companies to get direct access to our government data, where, by the way, it is illegal for any foreign company in their own countries to get direct access to their repositories. All of this is actually part of how we need to be seeing our data and our protections in Nigeria. But, you know, we also have to look at it, and somebody mentioned, from the business side. Now, from a platform perspective, I think, you know, Facebook, there was $17 billion in 2020 generated from advertising alone. Nigerian businesses use WhatsApp, especially the SMEs, for growth. In fact, WhatsApp is more trusted than Instagram, for example. And, you know, it's actually also used for advertising in terms of the status updates. So while there are many benefits to this, we do need to look at how we can continue to protect Nigerians. We do need to look at how we can strengthen our NDPR regulations to be as strong as those in the West. And we also need to start to look at a national security view of our data, how it's used by social media platforms, and how we give access to this data so that we can actually protect Nigerian citizens. It is actually a critical issue that can lead to, I would say, a digital colonization that we have no idea where it's going to lead when it happens.
From what you're saying, is data privacy and data security same, or there's a little difference there?
You know, so what I would say, you know, in my experience is it depends on the philosophy of the country. What I advocate for more is in most environments, when we talk about data privacy protection, there is a national security view to it as well, where national security has a seat at the table. So, you know, for example, somebody mentioned China, you know, you can't, you know, carry, you know, data out of the country. By the way, even look at TikTok. If you look at what United States did to TikTok coming out of China, it had a lot to do with the fear of how much data they had on the teenagers, what they were doing, facial recognition because all their faces were on camera, their transactions, who they were talking to, mining their data. And the thing that scares me the most is that so many Western countries are clearly making decisions because they take national security very importantly. We in Africa, and particularly Nigeria, need to also know that they're doing this for a reason, and perhaps we need to be taking this seriously as well.
Mr. Esige Aguele, thank you very much. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Hakeem Majijola, you were itching to respond to the matters on the table.
Well, I want to build on what others have said, and let's talk about some numbers. Facebook Messenger collects about 46 additional pieces of information, the metadata. That is the data about data, as has been pointed out, your location, when you sent the message, when you received it, how big the message was, who it was sent to, etc. That's the metadata. So Facebook Messenger collects about 46. WhatsApp actually collects closer to about 16. Telegram collects about 8. Signal collects between 0 and 1. And the point I'm trying to make out here is that, you see, the less data you collect, or the less data your app collects, the more private, because I cannot sell what I don't have. But let's give you an example. I think about a year or two ago, the US military decided that it wanted its troops to monitor their fitness. I mean, we want soldiers to be fit. And so what they did was that they issued them with Fitbit, so that it monitors your heart rate, your running, you see. And of course, the soldiers were using it. And one day somebody realized that they were seeing Fitbit tracks, going in circles in the middle of nowhere in the Republic of Niger. How? Apparently those were secret American military bases with a running field. So in the morning when the soldiers go for their running with their Fitbit to monitor their running, it was transmitting it open onto the internet. And so you can see that there are implications. So one is just trying to bring some of these issues together. And Mr. Kingsley, let's be honest. I love your phone. It's a beautiful phone. But this phone knows more about your movement than your wife.
Certainly.
That's it. So that's the privacy issue. This device knows more about where you go. I mean, if anybody uses, I think, either Google Maps or something, after you use it, it'll say, oh, how was this restaurant? How was this,
2 months, 3 months.
Exactly.
I'm trying to make some proposals to you, too.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, it's trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
But again, it's still back to this issue that if something is free, you are not the customer. You are the product being sold. Bottom line.
It just, Abdul Hakim, it's just like this activity watch that everybody, people strap. It's helpful, but it will help you with your step. It will help you with your step, with your step count. It will help you with some of the other essentials, your heart rate when you are working out. But when you check, because it has to go with your, the Bluetooth has to be on, and your phone also has to be on. It doesn't work on its own.
Correct.
When you finish, you will see the map of your movement, location. Femi, I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Precisely. It will show your zigzag movement, where you went to. If you went from your bedroom to the kitchen, you went from there to the play field, you went around wherever your exercise was. So this is the kind of privacy
But if we may build on that, to go back to what Mr. Isegele was talking about, the national security component. Now, where that data lives or resides becomes important.
That's right.
If that data resides on servers in Chicago, it means that the FBI has jurisdiction on your data prior to the Nigerian police. So it means if the Nigerian police is trying to investigate you and your movements, it has to go and get permission or clearance or approval from a foreign agency. And they have every right to say they're not giving you. So it also comes back to, once the data is exfiltrated from you, who actually owns it? Because one would argue it's no longer yours. It was generated by you, but it's no longer yours.
So the custodian.
Yes.
The custodian becomes very, very important because there are 3 elements of the data subject, the custodian and the data processor. And so all this, come together. There is a very important thing he pointed out, like when he was talking about the number of information that the applications collect, access. But there's one caveat there, and I want to point that out. The caveat is, the major thing in all these policies, regulation is trust.
Yes.
Because I can tell you I'm collecting zero information, but I can still collect 10,000. You won't know.
You wouldn't know.
How will you know? So you are not, there is, I think it's this place that I've actually advocated that we should have the NAFDAC equivalent in the cyber, everything cyberspace, because it needs continuous, from the government side, we need continuous monitoring to ensure that what the providers say they are doing, that's actually what they are doing. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, but that should be NIDA's role.
Well, NIDA wouldn't be able to do this. In most countries, this is research-based.
Okay.
And that is why you see most countries today, they have several centers of excellence in the universities, because research is the domain of the universities. Yeah. So you need to designate certain universities, create centers of excellence in many universities within Nigeria, and specifically target them, specific research in certain areas, to be able, because trust is very, very fundamental. And another aspect, like you are talking about regulation, there's what we call non-repudiation. How do you ensure non-repudiation? So all these, are just a kind of technical things, but trust is behavioral, if you understand what I mean. Because I promise you I'm going to do this. How certain are you sure that I'm actually going to do it? I can do something else. And so that is why, Jola said, research and development is very, very key, because the terrain we are is a knowledge-based terrain. It came as a research and development, and everything that is happening within this space is still research and development. So any country that plays down on research and development in the cyberspace is doing that at their peril. For instance, I was listening to one of the Army generals talking a few days ago, and he was talking that it took them almost 2 years to procure equipment from the US, military equipment. Now, in few years to come, we will not be importing military equipment as it were. It will be cyber weapons. And you order cyber weapon, it takes you 2 years to get the cyber weapon. What is the cyber weapon? It's a code. It's a software. And by the time they even give you the weapon you have ordered, maybe it becomes obsolete. And so this is why every country I know in the surface of the earth, like he said, we are always reactive. We're not, proactive. Are doing intensive research in this area because it is a knowledge base. It's like a game. We are in a field. And that game, you are playing a game. So it depends on how much you prepare. That's how you can win the game. So if you understand where I'm going. Yes. So this is very, very important. There are a lot of issues, in this privacy we are discussing. Privacy is a very intricate and complex subject that is actually hard to treat.
Yes, I was doing some reading up quite some time back, and they said wars will no longer be fought on the ground. Absolutely. It's going to be cyber war and Absolutely. All that. Yes, thank you very much. As the conversation begins to wind down, it's becoming very, very interesting, but we have to take a break. We'll be right back.
Nigerian Microfinance Bank wishes to inform the general public not to give money to anybody disguising as its staff or agent to secure the COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility, or AGS MEIS loan. However, a training fee is charged by Accredited Entrepreneurship Development Training Institute, EDIs, for the training and business plan for the AGS MEIS loan. Whenever you are in doubt, please call us at 0901 002 6905. If anyone has collected money to help you get the loan, please lodge a complaint on our whistleblowing portal by sending us an email on whistleblower@nmfb.com.ng. Nigerian Microfinance Bank also wishes to inform the general public that the COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility disbursed by our bank is a loan and beneficiaries must pay back with interest. The COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility should not be misconstrued as a grant from the government. Call 094-621-730 or visit www.nmfb.com.ng for more information.
The counsel of our fathers
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
My name is Nancy Oyedia Orom. I'm AIT correspondent. I've been covering the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 the last 1 year. I just took the jab, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and it was seamless. And I was opportune to take these vaccines with the SGF, the ministers. So I want to use this medium as a journalist for someone who has experienced COVID in the last 1 year. I want to implore media houses, broadcast industries. Let's join hands together to propagate the good information out there for people to believe in these vaccines. That's the only way we can have health immunity and also achieve the projection and target of Nigeria come 2022. Well, I must implore all Nigerians to go out there, register on the Primary Healthcare Development Agency website. These vaccines are free for all Nigerians. Go to the website, register. It is free for you and I.
Life can be very eventful. We curiously expect things to happen, even when we don't know what. Our human nature makes us like and repost lots of information. Some are unverified, inciting anger and hate. Sometimes innocently, other times the urge to break it first. This, in most cases, has caused destruction in many nations.
All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service, and we're still discussing social media and privacy policy. Of course, there are ramifications to this subject matter. All our guests are still with us. Let's bring in again Mr. Esige Aguele. Mr. Aguele, well, I would like us to interrogate this aspect so that we know where we're pitching. Now, in plain terms, it appears that the privacy policy enforced, say, in Europe isn't the same enforced in Africa. The privacy policy in the US isn't the same as that in Africa. And earlier, Femi Daniel of NIDA was indicating to us that the ICT philosophy has three broad strands or three broad tendencies. It could be one or a combination of one or two. The business orientation, more commonly in the US. Security, more common in China and Russia. And autonomy, more common in Europe. Where do we lie in this philosophical orientation, or where can we take our bearing from? Or again, are we just being bombarded by all sorts so that we therefore look almost like an amoeba in terms of our philosophical orientation to dealing with ICT, so that we can ultimately maximize the benefit either for our own security, for business, and then for the protection of the privacy of the individual?
So, and first I would say that NIDA has done some research on NDPR and significant work to put that together. Yes, there are those philosophies. So I think we are more, I would say, capitalist leaning in Nigeria, where it's a democracy and we're all very business minded. in the United States, I would say that they have a good balance of capitalism or capitalist view, but also national security. One of the big things, you have to remember with these platforms in the United States is that the companies that control this data are already within United States boundaries. So a lot of the concerns of data being outside the country or being in foreign hands doesn't even apply. And yes, in Europe they do have a lot of autonomy, or I would say where the individual tends to have more control over how his data is used. I will say that we have a balance. We can come up with a balance. We have taken a capitalist view to open it up so that businesses can thrive in Nigeria, and we definitely shouldn't stop that, and we need to have an open society. But we definitely need to, I would say, come up more, include more of a national security or the data protection view as well. Particularly because we have to protect our market, we have to protect our individuals, we have to protect our national security, where we can't have a situation where companies not in Nigeria know more about our citizens than our government, than our police, than our people. The other day, I was talking to my wife about something we wanted to buy, and if a day after until today, I am seeing ads on social media platforms I never searched, just from talking, by the way, about this particular device. So imagine all the listening that's even going on in our national security area, where we even have our phones on and are having government meetings, right? Are having national security meetings even sometimes. So what I would say about it is that work has been done. We have some ways to go to include two things. And I think that with the automation, there are companies like Verify Me and other organizations that are innovating on helping individuals protect their privacy. So there will be some, I would say, work to do with private sector on that, and that can be done. But on national security, we do need our government to step in and really recognize that our data is our national security asset, and we need to do our best to keep it in our country and do our best to control it. So just to answer the question shortly is, we're more capitalist leaning in our NDPR, and I think that we do have some more work to do on the automation side, and we have a lot of work to do on the national security side as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Aguele. Femi, Daniel, what's your reaction to this? It's a bit more elaborate. And while you're reacting to this, there was also part of the statement issued by NTA, an indication that there might be a hackathon or to try to get some creative young minds to develop platforms or apps that could be used in country and probably also exported.
Yes, actually the Director General of NTA was in Lagos last week, and he had an extensive engagement with the tech community in Lagos. And I can tell you for a fact that there is no other country that is as innovating as fast and as robustly as Nigeria in Africa. I think it should be a cheering news for Nigerians that we have some of the brightest young people in the world, people who are actually innovating around government. They are thinking about how government can be more functional. They are thinking about how education can be better. They are providing solutions that are even being adopted all across the world. So while there are a lot of on-cheering news all around, one thing we can be rest assured of is that we have some of the best youths in this country, and the Director General has had real engagement with them. He is also a very young person, and NIDA is working as much as we could within our resources and our mandate to ensure that we continue to prop up this ecosystem. Now, for the national philosophy, I think Esege is right on point. We cannot focus on the financial aspect, the economy aspect, and leave the security aspect out of it. And there is an ecosystem. NIDA is a critical player in the ecosystem, but we also have the academia, we have the National Security Advisors Office. There are some mandates that have been deposited with that office, and NIDA is working assiduously with everybody in the ecosystem. We have very strong relationship with everybody in the ecosystem. For example, we are not the core agency, sponsoring or pushing the data protection bill. But I can tell you that NIDA has done some of the most robust work on our new data protection bill. This is to tell us that for we as an agency, our focus is if Nigeria works, it has catalytic effects on every other aspect of our national life. So it's not about trying to be put ourselves in boxes. We are working across. But I also want to say that we are reaching out to the business community. And of course, the business community is also reaching out to us. Some of the things we are doing, we would not say we just wake up in our dream and just say this is what needs to be done. Some people call us to say these are the issues, and we think about some of these solutions together. That is why, as good as it is for us to have a national law, which we are working on, we must also have very agile and robust, humble regulatory agencies who are willing to hear what is going on and to be able to act as quickly as possible. And that's one challenge I would also be bringing to our very distinguished academics. And just 2 weeks ago, I was in Unilag for a whole week. We were having engagements about privacy protection. We learned a lot from them, and they also learned some of the things we are doing. But right now, NIDA has actually created an opportunity. What academics need is data, credible data. We have, by instituting the data protection regulation, we actually have what we call the audit process that has about 66 questions. If we have an application from institutions and universities to say, we are interested in analyzing this information that you have collected to be able to see how this fits into our national security on data protection and all that. These data are available, but we will not continue to fish for people to say, come and collect it, while we are trying to talk to people. So I think it's a two-way street. While government has its role, the academia also has its own role to actually also push government to do certain things. I think there's no one way to solve all these problems. So for us, I think all we need to do, let us recognize the fact that social media and technology is the way to go. While there are a lot of scary things that are being said on sets today about the way, we are being monitored and all that, we can also look at innovative ways to also curb some of these things and reduce it. But let me also quickly finally mention something about the issue of storage. Currently, the issue of storage was a very serious debate in the last bill, the last data protection bill. And in that bill that was presented, it was said that if anybody who stores data outside of Nigeria will be fined up to 8 billion naira. And I think that was a major sticking point.
Can you say that again? 8 billion?
8 billion naira. 8 billion naira. That was the last bill that was passed to the president. And if we look at that, as good as that intention was, it also has a lot of economic and even national security implications. Because the young people, if you actually implement that law, that means that our young people who are actually, using Amazon, Azure, Microsoft 365 and other kinds of products which are not resident in Nigeria, they will be cut off right now, right here. And it could actually, it's a debate, and Dr. Mbanaso has been a frontal person in that conversation. But we are happy to always have this conversation. But what we have proposed, and we are proposing at NIDA, is that we need to segregate the kinds of data that we need to actually segregate them. Critical national information needs to be hosted and stored, processed within the country. Meaning there are some mid-level kinds of data that should be stored. For example, telco data. Of course, NCC already has them stored in Nigeria, but even the telcos, some of them, I understand, and I stand to be corrected, they can also process some of those data outside of Nigeria. And there are other data that are not really critical that we should allow to flow freely in the digital economy. But there is also another model that we have looked at and we are proposing. Bahrain, for example, have this model of you have a data center with us, but you have the jurisdiction over that data that is being stored within our country. So, for example, if we have that kind of provision in our law, our rack center, Main One, Galaxy, they can actually be hosting African citizens' data, and Togo is hosting in Abuja, and yet Togo's law would be applying to that particular data that is hosted there. So all these things are fluid thoughts that we need to continuously engage with. We shouldn't be very, straitjacketed about these issues and look at how best we can actually continue to promote our national interest while not compromising our security.
Dr. Uche, you're itching to respond.
Yes, I'm very, very itching to respond because I've had a lot of battle in this regard, and especially there is something I find amazing, and that is some of our legal friends, with all due respect, should know that there are a lot of technical issues. And when you are trying to design a policy, you need that input from people who understand the technology, who knows how this data move from one point to another. Remember what Ajijola said. If you are hosting your data in California, if you want that data to move, for instance, you must apply in Georgia, in Atlanta, or wherever it is hosted to be able to get the data. And so we have running this battle. Like the provision he said, I was very instrumental to that provision. Because if whatever you don't have, you don't control. If I'm not having this water holistically, I can't control it. So data today is life, is the oil. And every country, you can't see US hosting national data in Russia or in South Africa. You can't see that. And so what we have advocated, like the example he gave, and which is, sometimes I tell them that it's not true, that it will inhibit our young people. No. Our young people who want to use Amazon or any cloud services, that will not stop them. And this is why they need to talk to experts that are technically inclined to be able to tell them how these things can be done and still protect our data. But the problem is that most of our friends from the legal perspective, just take it from the legal angle without considering that the technical issues that are concerned need to be actually taken into consideration.
Okay, Dr. Mbanaso, thank you very much. Ajijola, we're running out of time. Very quickly. I imagine that all of what we're talking about, so we say cyberspace, that this will also involve the use of satellites.
Absolutely.
So how then can we be a custodian of our metadata or mega data or whatever it is called when we're not big players in the satellite business? That's one question I want you to answer very quickly, and then I also go over to Aguele. How? Is it possible? Because if you have to borrow a satellite or you are a tenant on some satellite, they'll still have a way.
Once your data goes through the satellite of another country, basically you must assume that they have a copy of it, period. So you either invest directly in your own satellites or you invest in the companies that own the satellites. So one way or the other, you must have an ownership interest. But if I may just quickly point out some things I'm a bit anxious about. Number one, we are only at the beginning. This thing is going to grow. This problem we are debating is going to grow exponentially. 5G, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence are just going to magnify and broaden. Mr. Aguele talked about national security. It's important, and I believe that it underlies much of the discussion. But you also have to be careful. It's about balance because it's a very, very heavy hammer. But let's also understand, about a year or so ago, India banned 118 apps for its own national security reasons.
Bound.
Yes, remove them. But the reason, arguably, behind the scene was that those apps in the main were from China. And India at the moment is having issues with China. So that was the national security component. And then finally, when we talk about NDPR in particular and privacy, I want us to understand that NDPR is a subsidiary legislation. It's a regulation. We must understand that privacy actually is already enshrined in the 1999 Constitution. Privacy is actually in the Child Rights Act. Privacy is in the National Identity Management Act. Privacy is in the National Health Act. Privacy is in the Freedom of Information Act. So it's not as if we have not, as a society. All I ask is that in all of these things, we must look for the balance. It's not about this extreme or that extreme. It is about how we balance and how we are dynamic to adjust as situations adjust. Thank you.
Abdul Hakim, gentlemen, you guys are experts. It's a subject matter, I believe that, as you said, as it grows exponentially, we'll also have to return to it. We haven't even talked about the orientation of our lawmakers to these issues. Aguele, very quickly. Now, when the issue about this was WhatsApp bringing up its new privacy policy, and then NIDA saying they're going to encourage some hackathon. Is it possible for Nigeria to say have its own equivalent of WhatsApp? If you have equivalent of WhatsApp, can you cross-communicate? Can you communicate from, say, a Nigerian, let's say, DoZap, whatever it is called, with somebody who has a WhatsApp or with some other application that are available in China?
30 seconds.
5 seconds, I give you.
No worries. So actually, that's a great question. And I think potentially something that could happen in the future. Right now, you cannot. But to answer the first question is there are apps in Nigeria like WhatsApp with the same functionality. And the truth is perhaps we need to be encouraging using those apps, particularly in our government for our national security. Perhaps we should also consider not allowing some apps in certain environments. But I do agree with Mr. Femi Daniel that we cannot stop business. I also agree with the doctor as well that we can still host our data here and kind of have our applications, in Amazon for critical data in Nigeria. So there are hybrid models we can use to meet that standard of keeping our data in Nigeria. And I think that maybe the legal folks need to talk to the technical folks as well. So in short, there are Nigerian apps. And the second question, no, we can't cross-communicate at this time. But hopefully in the future, you never know.
Mr. Segi Aguele, Chief Executive Officer, Verify Me Nigeria. Thank you so much for your contribution to this conversation. Dr. Uche Mbanaso, Executive Director, Center for Cyberspace Studies, Nasarawa State University. Thank you so much for your input, as always. And Abdul Hakim Ajijola, cybersecurity expert. As always, it's a pleasure having you on the program. Femi Daniel, Dex Officer, Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDA. Thank you so much for your clarification on so many issues. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us tomorrow for another edition. I am Jumai Yusuf.
Take care of yourself. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
This is the network service of the NTA.